It's June 24th, 2018, and this is episode 72 of Fancy Ramen. I'm Neil.
I'm Cookie.
Hello, Scott. Sorry, that was a yawn.
Scott's sleepy after watching an incredible movie. Not just any incredible movie, but an incredible sequel.
Are you talking about The Incredibles too?
No, of course not. A movie that Slate was apparently confused about the politics of.
What do you mean? Tell me about this.
It literally was just my daily hate fest, or my daily annoyance with Twitter, where Slate had posted an article stating that the politics of Incredibles 2 was complicated rather, incredibly confusing, and I'm letting it load up. The politics of Incredibles 2 are incredibly confusing. And then it's followed by a shit ton of posts or retweets of people saying, it's a cartoon. Geez, it's a cartoon. It's time to put the keyboard down. Liberals can't even watch a movie and enjoy it. Jesus, why does everything need a political slant now, etc., etc.? And, yeah. I have nothing to say about, the political leanings of Slay or anything like that. I just get annoyed that people get so frustrated on Twitter that they have to express their opinion about everything or displeasure.
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah, basically.
I don't have time to read this review, but it essentially seems to be, or you're talking about the one by Inku Kang on Slate?
I didn't care enough to even go that deep into it. I was more annoyed at Twitter as a whole, not so much Slate.
That's a new state to be in. Yeah, I don't know. I actually personally think that they did a fair. I think what I'm getting from this without reading it, which of course is maybe not the best way to try and tackle or interact with an argument.
Well, that's how all of those Twitter replies have also been formed around. So
good. Okay, so as long as I'm good as the majority of Twitter, I'm going to feel okay with this. But ultimately, I think it is a, if we want to look at it as a political commentary art piece, which I happen to go because it is a animated movie franchise now or series that I like. It's not bad. And as far as political commentary goes, I feel like it tries to tackle these ideas on human autonomy and independence from multiple angles, with both the responsibility is upon those who have the greater ability to help those around them, and the responsibility is on individual citizens themselves to essentially bootstrap themselves in times of distress or danger, things like that. And I don't know, they make a relatively accessible villain for the argument that people should be more self-sufficient and less reliant upon those above them, or those that have advantages that they do not, while they also have the, I guess, more generous superhero class wanting to do good and being capable of doing more good than the average person in this universe. And I just feel like they're two kind of arguments that they bring out a general idea of, and then they don't completely tackle it throughout the film. You can say because it's a Disney or Pixar film that it has to have a happy ending for the most part, and so the happy ending is the Incredibles getting to go back and be superheroes by the end of the movie. That shouldn't be really a spoiler for anybody. That they essentially conclude that the thesis that those can help others due to their inherent advantages should, and that's fine. But I don't know. Do we really need to tackle this film in that way?
I did not mean to lead you into a political discussion about Incredibles 2.
It's okay. I'm ready. As you can tell, I'm very awake. people who are watching, obviously, the video element of our recording could see that I'm stifling back yawns, yawny tears, and just overall fatigue. But it shouldn't. It's not from it's not from getting burned out at all the excitement I felt watching the film last night. Also, really, I just want to say that I really enjoyed the film, but they also had a short at the beginning that I thought was exceptionally good called Bao, about the little Chinese like dumplings, the little steamed dumplings. And it is a very cute, heartwarming animation. It's probably one of the best I've ever seen. And I went from like uproarious laughter to holding back tears within the 5 minutes that short progresses. And I was pretty impressed at it.
Sounds magical.
It was. I'd recommend it. I think I really enjoyed the first Incredibles, and I think this one I like it even more than the first one. So if you're planning on going and seeing it, you're in for a treat with the short, and the show kept me entertained throughout the entirety of it, and it really flew by. Like there wasn't much of a dull moment, which I also really thought. They just had excellent pacing with the whole thing. And a good balance on kind of the characters who got screen time. So that's all I got. What have you guys been up to?
Me and Lizzie went to our 10-year high school reunion yesterday.
Are you that old?
Apparently, yes.
Oh my gosh. How was it?
It was interesting. Pretty much everyone still hung out with the same people they hung out with in high school. So like as people were showing up, the normal groups were getting together as if these are the people we normally hang out with anyway. So on like a regular basis. So the group of friends that I came with, we just pretty much hung out and ran into just said hi politely to people we knew from way back when and did a little bit of catching up, but not much.
So you only checked in with people you liked. You didn't hunt around for people like, I want to see how bad their life is. You didn't go for the more vengeful side of catching up.
Nah, considering I only went to that school for like 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't much history for me to. A lot of people were like, "You graduated with us?"
Yeah, there was no bitterness to cash in on.
Pretty much.
I really wonder about going to high school reunions for that. Not that I have many people that I really care about seeing not doing well, but it's just I'm fascinated in how people's lives like scatter post high school.
Wasn't
pretty
Facebook
much.
made for that curiosity though?
Yeah, but I don't use Facebook because I could care less about lining Mark Zuckerberg's pockets anymore, making myself an easier ad target.
And so that's why you have to go back to, or you're going to have to go to your high school reunion.
I don't know. It depends on how big of an endeavor it is. I'm not sure I'm willing to spend a couple $100 on a plane ticket just to go out and see people from high school. It's like I don't know if you guys are. I'm assuming you're at that stage, and it sounds like Cookie is, where it's like if you still are in contact with people from high school, they're probably pretty close friends of yours. And if you're not in contact with people from high school, it's totally fine because it doesn't affect your daily life, and you probably don't think about those people very often anymore.
Very much so. It turns out one of the chicks that we go on like the what's the thing called? The tubing trips down the Elkhorn with.
The drunk
Turns out we
river?
had classes together.
Floating the river?
Yeah.
Okay, river floats.
Yep. So one of the chicks that we go river floating with, me and her had classes together. It turns out, even though we've been hanging out for the past like year and a half, we didn't realize, like, I didn't realize that she was the Sarah Mormon until last night.
Did she realize it? That she was the Sarah?
She said she knew of me in high school, and then after we started talking about high school really in classes, and then we were like, oh shit, we totally had classes together. We had multiple classes together. It was pretty bad. But besides that, it was Lizzie got to catch up with a bunch of people she hadn't seen in years, and yep, that was pretty much it. Nothing all that interesting.
And I
How
don't
about you,
really
Neil?
have much to contribute aside from work, overtime, same old, same old. That'll be the story of the rest of this year, most likely.
The story of the rest of your life.
Yep. Before we talk about games, I wanted to give us one last opportunity to talk about E3 nonsense that we did not cover last week. Any takers before I take?
I realized now why I was very sad to hear that Ninja Theory was bought by Microsoft.
Oh, right, because you thought they were Team Ninja, correct?
Correct. But then you said Ninja Theory is the one who makes Dead or Alive, right?
Yep.
And
No, Team Ninja is the one that makes Dead or Alive.
Oh, then never mind. Fuck it.
Yeah. So Ninja Theory really has only made at least. I'll double check here, but the games that we can think of would be Heavenly Sword, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, DMC, Devil May Cry, not to be mistaken for the mainstays of the Devil May Cry series, Disney Infinity 3.0, and Enslaved Odyssey to the West, and many more, apparently. Kung Fu Chaos.
Ooh, that was a good game. Also for Xbox.
Any other things you wanted to pick back up on for E3?
I don't have anything. I feel like I tossed mine in at the very end of the last episode.
I had three things that came to mind. Neo 2 reminded me I needed to play Neo 1. Dead or Alive 6 looks pretty good, actually, and it seems like they're definitely trying to get away from boob physics and scantily clothed women.
That's good, because I imagine that can't sell your game as well as good gameplay.
I mean, it depends on what audience
Dead or
you're going
Alive?
for.
I was going to say Dead or Alive was actually a really solid fighting game.
Yeah, it at this point, it's Virtua Fighter, since Virtua Fighter's dead.
Pretty much.
And like, quite frankly, there is a lot of depth to its gameplay. It's not as deep as Virtua Fighter, but it certainly has a lot of the elements that make Virtua Fighter like a good fun fighter. I feel redundant saying fighter with the topic of that title. But if you looked at any of the videos, you'll notice that they actually showed more men than women, which I think was a conscious decision. And the women that we did see had very covered outfits. Like Kasumi had a full body outfit or bodysuit on, and Helena had a very conservative outfit compared to like characters like Tina and Tina.
I was gonna 9 times out of 10, Kasumi does wear a full body outfit in the story mode.
Really? Normally she wears that blue gi.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So her like ninja body outfit this time was like kind of surprising because it's so different from her typical suit.
It depends on what's going on in the story. If she's doing anything for the official family, she's in the ninja suit. If she's freelancing for herself, she's in the gi.
See, and that just goes to show you my reluctance to play Dead or Alive. Until maybe
such
this
a
time.
good story. Such a good story.
And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was actually that the new Catherine full body promo videos that came out could very well imply that my theory that this third Catherine is indeed an angel and lacks genitalia, which, you know, that was a big story a few months ago when people were saying that they were essentially making Vincent, the character, the protagonist, essentially have these horrible reactions to third Catherine, or Rin, or whatever her name's going to be, being a transgender or identifying as a woman, born man, etc., etc. I'm pretty excited to play through that game again. Not necessarily for the extra story, but just I would like to play Catherine puzzles once more. And that
I'm
about does
surprised. I'm surprised you guys didn't mention Battletoads. You guys are all about the nostalgia.
it.
I didn't notice anything about Battletoads. What's up with that?
They're remaking it, or it's coming out.
What's it coming out for?
Yep,
Xbox,
maybe.
Xbox,
Gotcha.
and assumedly Windows. But
Okay.
I mean,
And
it's
it's
a
also
rare.
going to be on that like what was it? There was going to be a Sega Genesis like classic coming out sometime soon as well.
Oh yeah,
It'll
assumedly.
be on that for
I don't.
sure.
I don't remember if that was a title on there though, because is Battletoads not a part of Rare and Rare Replay?
I don't know. I never got past the first couple levels as a kid.
Okay, yeah, it's developed by Rare. I was pretty certain that was the case. I doubt they would end up releasing that on the Sega Classic or whatever it's going to end up being, or whatever it's called. Partly because they've already released it on the Rare Replay, and I mean that was also released on the Nintendo or Super Nintendo, and we didn't see it on the SNES Classic. Although that also may have to do with the fact that the SNES Classic had 16 games, or however much it really did.
Apparently, Cyanide and Happiness as a video game.
Yeah,
What game is that?
I do remember reading about that.
Rejects, Rapture Rejects.
It's a battle royale game.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Makes sense.
And it's like kind of this weird top-down cartoony view. I mean, it could be fun. It's like exactly the opposite of what you would want from all right, maybe I'm overstepping my bounds here, but Cyanide and Happiness is like a witty, humorous webcomic. So you would imagine that a game, if they were to make one, would be filled with opportunities to be witty and humorous. And I don't necessarily think that a battle royale game is necessarily the best platform to reveal those talents in writing.
That's what you think. I don't think you've played any of the South Park games.
But those are RPGs where it's like a story mode, and there's like a narrative. And yes, we did play some, in fact. But those sources of media offer opportunities for storytelling and humor and so forth. And like a game that centers around one type of game mode doesn't seem like it's going to offer a whole lot of opportunity for them to write jokes. Unique
This looks
jokes.
awesome.
All right. Any of the last games people want to bring up?
Nope.
No, I'm good.
Bam. It's been deleted and taken off of the list. Games this week. I played a little more Raft, and I have to say that Raft has some beautiful opportunities for shenanigans, and it's especially enjoyable with the more and more players you add to the game. So
What's the maximum you've put in so far?
we've only put in 3. So I've seen as many as 5 and 6 before, and I'm really not sure if the game stability is up to supporting more than that. Because there are already some weird, interesting bugs I've seen through some videos and some bugs that we've experienced firsthand. Like someone opening up a chest and then they can't close out of the chest, so that chest remains open for everyone, so no one can get back into that chest. Interesting bugs where the physics go completely haywire for one player, so they may end up essentially drowning, even though for every other character they're not only above water but on top, like multiple stories on top of their raft, but continues to drown repeatedly.
Maybe they actually have gills. Did you think about that? Did you try putting them in the water?
You know what? It's funny you bring that up because that's part of like some of the shenanigans that you can pull off in the hardest difficulty. It's just coined hard for now. If you die, you have to have another player pick up your body and take you to a bed. But I have thought of ways to troll your friends while playing it, and one of those things would be just taking their body, go running off and throwing them off of the raft, into the ocean and just leaving their body behind. I think
Uh-huh.
you can respawn in other modes, but you lose all of your inventory. You could also take their body and then throw them into a room with a bed, but also make sure that there's no escape from the room, no door and no nothing. And if they don't have an axe, they basically can't get out of the room, and a lot of other things. The game also does a good job of like changing in its difficulty curve with more players, because while you have more people to gather the resources around you or the debris itself doesn't necessarily increase because you have more players around. So as a result, you're able to maximize that gathering, but there's still like a ceiling to how much you can gather, and there are more mouths to feed. So you have to be extremely. I imagine as you get more and more characters or people early on, you have to be much more careful about spreading or splitting your resources out. There is still a problem with the game's difficulty dropping once you get past a certain point. Once you've gotten enough resources to make some of the more advanced, we'll say, technology, it starts to plateau out pretty much no matter what number of characters or players you have. But I think that's more a problem that the game's just going to have to face while it's in early access. I would still recommend taking a look into it if you like the survival type games. Definitely not the same sort of hardcore experience you're going to get out of The Long Dark or games like that.
Yeah, it looks fun though. If it were maybe a little less buggy, I might hop into it with you.
See, I'm hoping the bugs never go away, or at least certain ones, though, because there are some things that are just inherently, I would say, casual or screwy with the physics. Like the idea that if you throw a hook out or a fishing rod, if you cast your fishing rod out, the projectile that is your hook and or bait remains at that point in the geometry, we'll say, of the world, no matter what you do. So if we were to think, or if you were to then think of the world as actually being the raft and the ocean is the one moving, your hook continues to move with your raft as opposed to staying still within the ocean. And it's something that simple that actually just gives you a little extra control in the world that makes you not have to, tear out your hair trying to throw the perfect hook or grappling hook to get like a barrel or piece of debris. What else comes to mind? Oh, yeah, the fact that I can just throw my hook on one side of the boat and run to the other side of the boat or raft to pick up something. And basically, in doing so, the hook doesn't necessarily have to move from that location. It's like the rope you're holding gets longer or stretches as you move away from it. So it's useful if you're fishing. You can go and actually pick up debris that gets in close enough to your raft, because your line is always going to be in that same point or place on the ocean, I guess you could say, or in relation to your raft. It's stuff like that makes the game like pretty casual, but like works in your favor in a way that like I really hope they never change that. I'm hoping they don't make this game like more hardcore in terms of like those physics getting tampered or tweaked in a way that's more realistic.
I don't know. It seems like it's a more lighthearted kind of survival game. So hopefully they do kind of keep those. And maybe they were already design decisions that making the hook a little easier to manage is a way to balance the game for people just starting out.
Yeah.
That they can kind of figure out these. They may be wonkier and less realistic physics, but they're ultimately there to aid the player with performing the tasks.
Exactly.
Succeeding at the tasks that they want to perform.
And I'm thinking that is indeed their intended design, but like when a game is in early access, you never know how much it's going to change. Sunless Sea, for instance,
that's true,
started off as basically like a turn-based game and then became something.
And now it's real time, right?
Yeah, it changed dramatically. And I'm not necessarily thinking it or saying that was bad, but it was certainly no longer the game that you bought originally by the time it was officially released. And then along with that, the rest of my time in games has been devoted to a multiplayer or co-op experience with my girlfriend. We've been playing God Eater Resurrection, which is a remake and remaster of a PSP game that is it's kind of a lot like Phantasy Star Online or Monster Hunter Lite, in that like it's character action. You are mostly fighting larger enemies, although they do have some ads on occasion, just like Monster Hunter. And like for the most part, the action it revolves around knowing your moveset, maneuvering around attacks, and like figuring out what a monster's like attack set or move set is. But God Eater seems to be a lot more like, at least at the point we're at, seems a little faster and definitely more mindless. So you have like your jumps and your dodges, your rolls, your kind of like your instantaneous dash. That's basically a roll without rolling, if you will. But if you use the mechanic which turns your sword or weapon into a monster mouth thing and eat enemies, it gives you a power, or it gives you like extra power. And by the way, when I saw this mechanic in God Eater, it made me think that Code Vein probably has some sort of connection to God Eater, because it looks almost identical in terms of what the two games are trying to accomplish there. But so when you get this extra power boost from eating enemies like that, you actually enable a double jump. So you can start jumping and dashing mid-air, so it starts to feel almost like a character action game, despite not having a unique protagonist like Devil May Cry or like the earlier God of Wars. It's not bad. It is definitely better when you put into reference that this game is still a PSP game, and it's not like they changed the core system of itself. And as a result, like for another sort of casual experience, that it's like when I'm not willing to devote an hour of reading the rules or getting into the lore beforehand to figure out what works best. It's definitely really enjoyable in that regard. And it's also nice that Tiffany and I are able to play cooperatively and still go through the story mode. So it just makes it gives you a sense of accomplishment within the narrative, but you're also able to work together without having to do anything janky. Like you can only play up to a point that one character has already gotten to, or anything like that some other games with cooperative story modes have done more recently.
You basically just do all the shots at Monster Hunter there.
But it certainly, I actually don't want to belittle Monster Hunter, because I mean, PSO also had the same sort of issues with the story mode and multiplayer. Monster Hunter is definitely a much better game than God Eater when it comes to like the mechanics. Well, probably just everything in general. But God Eater's kind of been a lighthearted way.
A frog suit, because this has a frog suit that I can see, and I'm into it.
It's definitely like a little more anime, I would say, than Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
And I also don't know if the story is necessarily anything to hold in like high standings, but it certainly has been fun just beating up monsters, dodging attacks, and doing like the Monster Hunter thing, but just a little more carefree.
The environments look really bland, and I can't tell if that's because the video I'm watching right now to get some perspective is all in the same environment, or if
it's because it's a PSP game.
Yeah, it when I play this game, I look at it and think to myself, this is definitely a PSP game.
One of the games I had on PSP. I hadn't really played anything this week due to crazy projects and things. I guess I forgot to mention, I did end up consolidating my computer behind my TV. And then I built a desk, so that way I had something to like put my mouse and keyboard on. But as far as video game wise, one of my friends texted me yesterday. He was like, "Hey, did you buy Mario Tennis?" And I was like, I didn't even realize that was out. So I ended up picking that up yesterday, and Let me tell you, it takes me back to the good old days of Mario Tennis 64. Like it's beautiful. No more of this Wii U crap, apparently, because I never played the Wii U version, but I hear it was not good. The story mode so far is interesting, and the kinds of unique challenges it has. Like one area that I was in had me going against like a mirror monster that would the bosses basically take damage as they return the ball to you. And
So
the
keeping
mirror,
it on the court with a rally is how you ultimately take down the boss.
yes.
Okay.
So I guess right before I had to fight the mirror monster, I ended up having to go into like this room that was full of mirrors that had like one giant mirror with like a bunch of floaty orbs on the mirrors that I actually had to like accurately hit. And depending on what they did when I hit them, I either had to hit it with a special move or that was not the right thing to do. And they're all like timed challenges of, hey, you got like a minute and 30 seconds to finish this level. Took me like 3 or 4 tries. It was the second try that I understood that, hey, if I hit the big thing and it goes into the star power and it makes a gong sound and pulses white, that's the one I want to hit. If it doesn't do that, that is not the one I want to hit, but you still have to be like super accurate with where your shots are landing. The mirror monster itself boss would catch the ball in one hand and then throw the ball out of the other mirror. So it would like go into the mirror and then pop out of the other side of the mirror until you then could do your special charge shot. And then you had to break the 2 mirror hands and then hit it in the middle of the face. It's kind of interesting. The actual story is very Dragon Ball Z. You've got to Wario and Waluigi come up to the tournament after you as Mario and Peach win the big tournament, and
And they're mad Waluigi didn't make it into Smash 5, so they're enacting their revenge.
pretty much. So they end up like cursing Luigi somehow, and then you find out that you've got to go collect these 7 power orbs or 6 power orbs, whatever, that are located around the island of tennis, because everything is a tennis challenge in this game. But yeah, you got to collect the 7 Dragon Balls to defeat the final boss. The offline tournaments, I've done the Mushroom Cup and I forget what the second cup usually is for these Mario games, but like the Star Cup like super ramps up in difficulty about like how good the AI is, has me sweating. I haven't tried the online mode since the beta, but I'm pretty sure if they've just fixed some of the connectivity issues, that it's going to be solid. And that was my one day of Mario Tennis, and I played the Crew 2. The open beta is out for the PS4 right now. And holy jaggies, Batman! Had you not told me what anti-alienism was, Neil, I would have known.
Anti-aliasing.
Neil knows
playing
all
this.
about anti-alienism with his XCOM play, but I
Pretty
saw
much.
that you were on this last night when I was setting up my PlayStation Online at the new apartment, and I was curious what your thoughts were going to be on it.
So besides so what they do when the race is about to start, they have like this pop out type of thing. So like they'll say like 3, and then your car will shoot into like this weird mode where there's like background solid colors and your car is like popping out onto, you can see the street behind you, and also the car kind of like pops out onto the white or something. And holy jackies, the tires are just like very badly photoshopped, like cut and pasted onto there, and it's just awful looking.
Hyper realistic tires. Better
Pigs,
traction.
yeah. So the racing on it is pretty solid, I guess I could say. It's the first race they have you do is a 1, 2. It starts off with you in a car, and then like you start going across this big bridge, and then everything goes inception-y on you, and then all of a sudden you're going not downhill, but just pretty much down like what looks like a sheer cliff. And it's still the road, and then it's like action, and then the camera like zooms all the way down and like goes across the curve where there's now water, and then you're driving a boat. So then you're doing the boat racing, which feels really weird as well. And then after a couple of minutes of doing the boat racing, everything goes real Inception-y again, and then you're flying a plane. And apparently the switching between it, I haven't gotten far enough in the beta to be able to have more than just a car so far. You can kind of choose when you first start the beta which route you want to go. You can go the street racing route, which starts you on a car, and then you can eventually unlock planes and things of that nature. Then you have the freestyle route that starts you on a plane, I'm guessing, because it's got a picture of a plane, and then kind of goes from there. And then there's like the pro rally route, which starts you on a boat. But it took a little bit of tweaking for like where my stick's dead zone was in order for the driving of the car to feel like a solid car driving game. The boats felt really, really not that good.
Like a boat.
Yep. And the plane also, I would much rather play God, what's the name of that one game that came out where you can be the Predator, where you fight the Predator, and it's a Ubisoft game. What's that game? Nobody?
Evolve?
Nope.
No.
Different. You're actually humans. Oh God, it was that new Ubisoft game that came out. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Either way.
It must have been really good.
The Far Cry 5? Far Cry 5. That one. Or no, I was actually thinking Ghost Recon's Wildland. But either way, so the flying feels kind of sketch as well. So when I was watching or reading like reviews on this game that you can like, not reviews, previews of this game where they're like, oh yeah, you can pretty much drive whatever you want. There's motorcycles, planes, boats, cars, trains, and automobiles, all that jazz. A lot of people were saying, I really hope they get at least one of the things of driving right, because it's really hard to get a driving game good that feels like really crisp. And this is an arcade driving game on top of that, but it's really hard to get a driving game crisp. It's really hard to get a flying game crisp. And has anyone played a boat racing game besides Wave Race 64?
Jet Moto, that mesh
Touche.
between water and sky.
Exactly. And
Diddy Kong Racing.
Ah, shit, son. Diddy Kong Racing.
I mean, they're hovercraft, but they're boats.
Nope, Diddy Kong Racing did it better, basically. But nah, yeah, so the driving, all of the driving feels really odd, but when they first announced the crew, they said, don't think of it as you're a person inside of a car and that's what you're doing for the RPG elements of the game. Think of the vehicle that you're driving is your character, and it really feels like that. So like I did a crazy, like after a race was over, I decided not to worry about continuing on to like the next race. And I took a turn and jumped off a crazy thing and went into like a weird area. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh shit, for that, there was some loot that dropped. Go pick up the loot. And I was like, what? So I literally picked up loot off the ground that were in like these big green things that said live, because that's the sponsor that's doing the game. So you know how EA has their big, is it EA? Yeah, like the SSX games, they do the big radio. There's Ubisoft is live apparently, and yep, they literally dropped me a new drivetrain and a spoiler to put onto my car. And then I was kind of going through the free roam mode, because one thing I liked about the first crew game when I played its beta was the fact that I quite literally started off in California and I only made it to about the Texas area, but I was on my way to Florida. So just like you can drive cross country. So this game, I was pretty much just driving cross country, found like 2 big loot boxes, and there's a radar pinging system. It's crazy.
So does
It's
putting a
weird.
spoiler like Bruce Willis was dead all along make your car go faster, or is it better controls?
Better control. It's so spoilers. It I haven't actually gone down a hill big enough or gone faster with the spoiler on to know for a fact, but spoilers basically give you more downforce.
Yeah, it's
So
to keep your
He's
car
not
from
airborne
flipping,
as
right?
much.
Yep, it's to keep your car on the ground. Because if you are going really fast and you go over like a small hill, like a small but immediate hill, you'll fly in the air. It'll put you on the ground a lot faster than if you didn't have a spoiler.
And you were
Yes.
saying with those Jaggies that some of those hills look like they're dead drops. So I'm sure the spoiler is great for when the floor just falls out beneath you.
Pretty much. But yeah, so that's those are the games I've been playing. And yeah, nope, those are literally the games I've been playing. No,
Cool.
or was there a computer game I was playing? I feel as if I was also playing a computer game recently. Oh yeah, I reopened Cuphead to give that a try. And still hard. Still hard. Those are my thoughts on that.
Well, Scott, what have you been playing?
Because I've been moving this week, I haven't had much time to play, but this morning I've probably completed now about 12 to 14 hours of Hearts of Iron. Hearts of Iron 4, which is another Paradox interactive game in the vein of Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis and whatnot. But it's a World War II grand strategy game, and it certainly does the word grand strategy justice, as it is streamlined in a lot of wonderful ways, but just as complex at its core as I've found Europa Universalis to be. It's essentially a game that I think would really speaks to players who like to play games with a lot of like combat strategy and tactics, where essentially what I've found is if you enjoy EU4, a lot of the game is like essentially managing these nations in a meta perspective and you're trying to succeed some goal that you normally set for yourself or is set by a condition through missions or through like single player scenario setups. In Hearts Iron 4, it's very similar, except it's a lot faster paced, obviously, in the period of time that you're tackling these things with, because it's supposed to be roughly the era of World War II. So you start in the 1930s, and I don't know exactly when the game ends, but a lot of your technology trees start to max out after 1945 or so, when World War II would normally be over. And so within this period of time, your like time frame is obviously very condensed in comparison to something like Crusader Kings or EU4, where hour to hour decisions and tactical choices in combat or other things are able to be executed. And that means that a lot of your movement within military strategies is going to be a lot more responsive and can be much more detailed than just moving large numbers of units around the map with like proper compositions. There's also a lot more diversity in a game like EU4, where you have essentially infantry, cavalry, and artillery. This is a game in which you have multiple types of infantry with specializations and supports built into the units themselves with different strategic benefits, and all sorts of artillery, naval, and like aerial specializations for combat. And so it's pretty much like the heavy duty military sim that I don't know, that I didn't know I wanted to play until I got into the nitty gritty of this, and now I've really enjoyed essentially playing a game that allows me to establish a battle plan and watch it go to shit, and then have to backpedal immediately to kind of solve the problems of my previous strategies. Neil, I'd really like you to join playing this game with me and Matt sometime, because one of the things that I find really satisfying in comparison to other grand strategy games is that the tech trees and political policy in this game are normally very quick. If you're researching a technology that is of the times, you normally complete it in a pretty short period. Like, you're going to access quite a few different pieces of technology throughout the spans of a single year. And you also, depending on which nation you're running, have different number of research slots that you can actually put towards improving your technology with, which is really nice. So if you want to be a infantry heavy nation, or one that has a lot of like political moves available to it, you can follow different branching paths, and the speed at which you complete these allows you to complete these paths much faster than other games normally allow you to. So it's very satisfying and very flexible movement of your priorities as a nation. Meanwhile, you also have a political focus tab that allows you to select political foci that are going to range from forming or breaking alliances and having aggressive stances towards different regions that you may want to take over or defend, as well as infrastructure and civilian policy-based choices that will impact some of the other benefits and statuses of your gameplay. It's a game that's also played without any money. You have political power and military strategy are the two like major currencies that you're operating under, and you don't need to essentially use a gold limit to determine how you're going to do things. It's more how effective is your nation at fulfilling these demands, and your efficiency at doing that will determine the type of powerful infrastructure or military might you can ultimately exert, as well as like civilian trade and things like that are very important. The types of nations you play also is relatively different. If you play as Germany, you're very well set to start a world war because you have technological advances and a lot of flexibility operating under an increasingly fascist government if you take that route. While democracies, which are still trying to return to a sense of normalcy after the First World War, have a lot of penalties based against them and are super reluctant to cause any sort of combat or conflict. And so you're playing in a very like vulnerable defensive stance when you're playing as, say, France. And I find the positions that you find these nations in are very interesting because of how dynamic some countries are and how vulnerable others are. I found myself playing as France recently, trying to balance between stifling communist and fascist political factions while trying to build out my military industry under a democratic regime that was reluctant to do so, and then found myself getting swept by Italy pretty quickly. It's a very interesting game, and these wars also seem a lot more higher stake as well, which is also another reason that I think the military component of it is very, very exciting. I haven't gotten to a point where I've seen many nations released after capture, but nations that are involved in the defeat or capitulation of another, like, of an opposing party in a war, essentially get to play a game divvying up the resources and territories of their opponents, which means that those with higher participation or longer investment in a war essentially rack up more points and are allowed to distribute more of the resources of their enemies, of their defeated enemies, to themselves before their neighbors and allies. But they also still have to go through a negotiation process in order to do so, which seems like a very realistic and interesting way to approach these divvying of post-war spoils. I'm trying to think if there's really anything else that's worth like highlighting quickly, but all in all, it's a super interesting take on a primarily military focused grand strategy game. And I'm looking forward to trying out a lot of different nations, as each one seems to have seems to have a lot of character to it in ways that sometimes nations in EU4 seem a little bland. If you're a trade nation and you're not Venice, you're just really not nearly as interesting. While in this game, so far, every nation I've seen interact with another nation seems to have some unique elements that make it look like it could be very interesting to play.
I'd be more inclined to join you guys, but Sunday has basically become a very hectic day for me in the mornings now. I'm also weary about going into a new purchase scheme with Paradox, another Paradox developed game. It's just that, like, so these games have an inherent issue if you're not playing them either on your own server or like as the host, or if you're not using like a server and with like a decent connection to play them, because lag becomes an issue when it's a matter of a second or half a second not being able to move a unit and whatnot.
Oh, that is absolutely true. If you can't be responsive to the AI on someone else's host, you could get swept by a change you don't see until it's too late.
So, like, I ultimately enjoyed EU4 more on my own when it came to getting in, like, being more serious with the game. Like, on a casual level, it's fun. It's better playing it with multiple people. But it's just not being able to make those concise decisions, concise in terms of time frame, kind of weakened the experience for me overall. So let's talk about some stuff happening in the world around us. I guess maybe the first thing to say is the Steam sale's on, so go check out all of those good sales.
I was going to ask you guys if there are any games you were eyeing for this Steam sale.
I've already spent $100 on games.
Oh,
so.
Okay. Could you give a quick update? I'd love to hear what you bought.
I think the big two games I picked up were Ni no Kuni 2 and oh my gosh, I know I bought another game that was like relatively new, but not. Final Fantasy 15 on PC, and I really want to give that like an actual, attempt through. And I'm hoping that the loading times will not be nearly as crazy on an SSD. And from what I've read, a 980 Ti is going to get the game running at a solid 60 frames in Ultra perfectly fine. So there were a lot of small games, and maybe we'll probably talk about those or put some videos up on those down the road.
I did pick up Crypt of the Necrodancer for about, I think I got a deluxe edition of it or something for about $7 this morning.
I have like a non-DRM version of that game that I got, I think, at a Humble Bundle or something years back, maybe.
Have you played it?
I played a little bit of it, not enough to really get the full experience, but that game looks super sweet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it later.
What about you, Cookie?
Yeah,
I actually completely forgot. Ooh, that's only $2.99 right now for the actual game of Crypt of the Necrodancer.
I picked up whatever its slightly upgraded version is.
The ultimate pack is $17.38.
There's something in between that's a little cheaper, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. I don't know
make
what the
you the
differences
coffee that the ultimate version does.
So I completely didn't realize that this was going on. I may end up picking up maybe Subnautica and probably the Red Strings Club.
Ooh, Subnautica's pretty good.
Both of those are great choices.
It's also terrifying.
Well, I really just want to play it in VR.
Yeah, that's actually, I would be super curious to hear how that goes.
And then you get to see your Raft glitch in real life where Cookie drowns in his living room because of the like horror of that game.
And if you happen to survive it, then you can take off your VR goggles and see all the vomit that is now on the floor magically.
Oh, yeah, Cookie. If you start to freak out, tell Lizzie to dip you in the bath. Just have her do it right away. It'll bring you back to your senses.
I mean, I've got to imagine that they use the VR or they use the movement like they did in Resident Evil 7, where your face is the direction that your character's in. Because I don't know how else you're going to not vomit profusely from like direction. I don't even want to speculate how else you're going to move in that game.
It's kind of weird how good they're getting with the free motion now. There's this PS4 game that came out a little bit ago that I have for some reason. Oh, because it was free, I think. It was like this arena shooter where you're going in like 360 degrees and you can swap shit on the fly. Apparently, it's supposed to be real good. I haven't actually tried it because I'm terrified, but
let's just very quickly. I'm hoping to keep this episode under an hour, so very, very quickly. We got
Too
two
late.
bits of news. First off, we have the Flip Grip, which is a new Kickstarter project. As of this recording, there's still 14 or 15 days left, and basically
And
it
it's
allows
almost
you
double its
to.
goal.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's almost double its goal on what it's raised.
Yep.
They wanted a $42,500 goal. They have $76,305 as of 12:17 p.m. Mountain Time, Sunday, June 24th.
And a very basic functionality. The product basically lets you use your Joy-Cons on the Switch when it's in a vertical mode as opposed to the typical horizontal, which would definitely benefit games that utilize the vertical mode, such as these arcade classics being released on the Switch. Seems interesting. And
Yeah.
along with that, there's a new difficulty patch that has been released for Ni no Kuni 2. Two new difficulties, hard and expert. Cookie, excuse me, Scott. You beat Ni no Kuni 2. Would you say
I did.
it would be better for players to start on hard right away?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I don't think the thing that I worry about with it is like any Japanese game, it gets kind of grindy near the end with difficulty if you're not doing a lot of side quests. If you're someone who wants to get through the main story, don't worry, there will be some combat difficulty near the end for sure. But if you want an experience that means that you do have to either show a lot of grit or you grind through some difficulty to get better equipped, why not start off on hard? It's not a particularly difficult game. The tells are easier than any other combat game like From Software puts out. So it should be relatively accessible on hard mode for most people. On an extreme mode, I don't know if I'd do that. I worry about that whole bullet sponge issue where you just have enemies with massive health bars and resistances that if you're not perfectly suited to fight them, you're going to just be spending hours trying to take down a large enemy.
Well, with this all said, that was episode 72 of Fancy Ramen. I'm Neil. Oh,
I'm
and
Cookie.
of course. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
And I'm Scott. If you'd like to write us an email, you can always send one to podcast@fancyramen.com. Please feel free to like or review us on your favorite podcast app or Apple Podcast preferably. And please tell a friend about our podcasting service. It's something that we enjoy to do, and we love for other listeners to hear it and get involved.
Wait, did you say the podcast email?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You
That
blacked
does
out. I took Neil's job, and he's like, "What do I do now? I don't edit."
I'm so lost. You mean aside
just
from
kidding.
like the 45 minutes I cut out from the last episode?
No. I I don't know. Have you posted that? Because I haven't heard it yet.
I put it on YouTube. It's been busy, so this.
It's cool, man.
But yeah, that is up. All right, guys, have a great week. We'll see you next.
Yep.
See you later.
Peace.